Hey, Grampian Nation, I want you to get excited because we have a spectacular guest. Her name is Julie Pham. She's the CEO of Curiosity Base. She's coming at you out of the Pacific Northwest. Hang on, we'll be right back.
In 2013, I coined the name Grampian, and I gave it to your host, Jim Tracy.
Julie, hey, welcome to the Grampian. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm better than I deserve, as I always say. But I shouldn't say Julie, I should say Dr. Pham, because you've got that PhD behind your name, which means you're like super smart.
Well, or worked really hard. But you can
Or
call me
yeah.
Julie. Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. So, you are the CEO of Curiosity Based. You are a author, a best-selling Amazon author. You are an award-winning community organizer and a TEDx speaker. Wow, that's a lot to do for someone who appears so young.
Oh, it's the good genes.
Okay.
So Asian skin. I look younger than I am. So
All right. Well, speaking of that, you were not born in the US. You were born in Vietnam
Mhm.
and were a very young refugee to the good old US of A. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, so that's a really important part of my identity. I came here as a 2-month-old boat person with my parents from Vietnam. My father had been in a communist re-education camp for 3 years, and he was just, I do not want to get sent back. And he was worried about that. And so we were the first in our family to flee and to come to the US.
Hmm. And obviously, you don't have a lot of memories of that, but it has made up your identity, as you say, a
Mhm.
large part of it. What about your family? I mean, your dad that had to have been like incredible culture shock to get here.
Yes, and so when he was in the South Vietnamese Navy, was a press officer, and so my parents started the first private Vietnamese newspaper in the Pacific Northwest. And so growing up, that was a very strong part of my identity, the Vietnamese refugee community, learning how to serve, learning how to ask for help. I think of my parents as the hustlers among hustlers because our customers were nail salon owners, the doctors, lawyers, the insurance agents, the restaurant owners, business owners
Uh-huh.
who were primarily serving other Vietnamese. And I just learned so much from them. And whenever I think about courage and if I'm afraid of something, I just think about what my parents did because there's this one, Worcestershire, she's a Somali British poet, and she writes, no one puts their child on water unless no one puts their child on a boat unless the water is safer than the land they're leaving.
Wow. Wow. That's so incredible. Now, when your folks came over, did they speak English at that point or?
Yes, my they did speak English. They had studied English, and so it wasn't fluent, but they were able to get by. And actually, Jim, I spent most of my childhood speaking in English with them, and it wasn't until after I graduated from college that did I start studying Vietnamese because I grew up in an era when it was all about assimilation and it's all
Hmm.
about learning English.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I started studying Vietnamese did I realize how limited their English was and
Wow.
how our relationship really deepened when I was able to start speaking in Vietnamese. And it really made me appreciate charisma
Yeah.
because my parents had so much charisma that they were able to overcome a lot of language barriers because people could feel it. People who were non-Vietnamese speakers, they could communicate beyond just language and beyond words.
Yeah. And that's a lesson really for all Americans. I have spent a lot of time in the Pacific Rim in both Japan and Korea. And when you take the time just to learn even a scant bit of the language, people tend to know you care then, don't they?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, is there a large, I mean, I know you spend a lot of time in the Seattle market and in the Pacific Northwest. Is there a large Vietnamese community in that area?
Yes. Yeah. So it's
Okay.
actually one of the biggest Vietnamese communities in the US. So the biggest one is actually in Orange County and in California. They actually have
Hmm.
5 daily Vietnamese newspapers. That gives you a sense of how big the community is down there.
Wow.
And I think that Seattle might be the fourth largest community. And so it's nice because it's big, but it's not too big.
Uh-huh.
And just growing up, there are the Catholics and the Buddhists, and we got along, and and I'm really proud of how the huge impact of the Vietnamese community, despite our size, because
Uh-huh.
we're actually still I think we're the third or fourth largest Asian community in Washington State, and yet we've accomplished so much, and that has a lot to do with asking each other for help. And so that's
Hmm.
something I learned as an entrepreneur because I watched my parents constantly ask for help and give help and practice this reciprocity. And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to learn how to ask for help.
Yeah. And that's one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? So the company that you founded and run is called Curiosity Based. Now, fortunately, I have commanded the English language. That's a curious name for a company, and it makes me curious. Why did you call it Curiosity Based?
Well, so that actually, I actually have to tell you, Jim, I wasn't always curious. So I want to start with that. Or I should say that the way that I thought about curiosity was actually an accumulation of knowledge and pursuit of knowledge. So when I was working to get my PhD, it was all about how do I accumulate knowledge so I can write this dissertation. And then it wasn't until I came back to Seattle in 2008 and I started working in my family's newspaper did I realize the power of curiosity just from learning from other people, from
Mm,
just building relationships. And I started to
yeah.
do a lot of community organizing and bringing together people from very different backgrounds, not just ethnic, racial backgrounds, but also sector backgrounds. And and I worked in the tech industry for 9 years, and the last six, I was at this job that I absolutely loved. It was the best job I ever had. And the only reason why I would leave the best job I ever had was because I felt called to start my own company. And
Oh,
that was
wow.
curiosity based. So I started that actually in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh,
And
boy.
the reason why I got interested in curiosity was because I was bringing together people from these different backgrounds and what could help people. And I saw some people really thrive and some people really struggle. And I realized the difference was curiosity, was their
Hmm.
willingness to learn. And it's not something that's actually, I know a lot of people think of it as innate. I think we actually all have curiosity, and it's something that can be nurtured more, and it can
Yeah.
also be shut down. And so what I realized was, if I can do this in community organizing, imagine what we could do in the workplace with people who are paid to work together.
Hmm.
And also, organizations, employers, they have an opportunity and I think also a responsibility to make the workplace a place of continual learning, because people don't just stop learning at school. We actually spend we only spend the first what, up to age 22 in school, and we spend the rest of our life at work, and whatever we are learning at work we actually bring to other parts of our life as well. So that's so it was really curiosity and
Uh-huh.
identifying that was the thing that could help people thrive. That's the reason for the name of the company.
Well, do you think if someone's curious, then they're always striving forward?
Well, I I think that there are times when we don't practice curiosity.
Okay.
And I actually it's really important to admit when we don't.
Yeah. Because I look.
I think it's actually more important to admit when we don't than when we
Hmm.
do. Because
Yeah.
like when we do, it's like, oh, that's our best selves. And to admit I don't want to practice curiosity right now. I don't want to learn. I'm right. I'm tired of this conversation. Why do I have to explain myself again? That is when to dig in and go, oh, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Why am I feeling this way? And so that's actually the work that we do, is to try to get people to also acknowledge that curiosity is a practice that we don't always want to practice.
Well, that takes us right into one of my favorite topics. As you're aware, I do a lot of workplace stuff, and that always surrounds culture. And we talked a little bit before about respect. And you wrote a book called The Seven Forms of Respect. I only thought there were two, but I'm learning and I'm curious. So let's talk a bit about the seven forms of respect.
So at the core of the seven forms of respect, it's actually about how do we get curious about respect.
Mm,
Jim, are you familiar with the five love languages?
yes.
Okay, so think of, there are different ways to express love. I actually think that there are different ways to express respect.
Uh-huh.
And and there are some things that we prioritize and some things that we don't prioritize in our personal lives and in our work lives. And we can agree on how respect feels, to feel seen, heard, acknowledged, appreciated. What we disagree about is what does it look like to you versus me? And so for some people, they want to be included on all emails. They want to be CC'd. They feel disrespected or excluded if they are not.
Uh-huh.
And for other
That's not me.
people, yeah, please only include me if you need me to do something.
Yeah.
And it might also depend on who are the emails from. Like, I want it from my boss, but not from my peers or not from people who report to me. And so in my work, it's actually about how respect is dynamic, it's relative,
Mm-hmm.
it's subjective because we are subjective, and it's also contradictory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's contradictory because we say something and we don't always do it.
Yeah.
We as people are contradictory. And it kind of just recognizes human nature and that we're not always, oftentimes we are imperfect, and that's okay. And that there's not this one hard and fast rule that we always do when it comes to respect.
Okay. So when I talk about respect a lot of times, I talk about the first measure of anybody who respects you is they will listen generously to you. And
Mm-hmm,
that's not just as first listening with your eyes and
mm-hmm.
then your mouth, like keep it shut, not just your ears, but then your attention and not focusing on the response, the answer, the solution, the rebuttal. Just focus on what they're saying and what they mean by it. Is that part of what you're bringing to the table?
So, attention is one of the forms of respect. And for some people, they want to give that, they can give that. And for other people, it's so multitasking
Mm,
is one of the things where if you multitask, you are not prioritizing attention. And in some companies, Jim, multitasking is a sort of sign of performance. I mean, I worked in the tech industry for a long time. People are just, they come in and they've got their laptop, they've got their phone, they are multitasking. And
mhm.
that's okay. That's actually, that's, you don't have to give attention. And
Okay.
so with the seven forms of respect, it's not to say you have to do this and this and this. It's not like seven habits of highly effective people. It's to recognize actually, what do we prioritize? Why? What are the consequences if we don't? And how do we then be clear about it? Because when I worked first in big tech, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, attention was not prioritized at all. That scene I just described is something I would see on a regular basis.
Oh my.
And to kind of be unapologetic, that's not what we prioritize. That's okay. So people can have clarity so they're not expending all this energy doing something that actually doesn't matter to
Mhm.
others.
Okay.
And also, Jim, I want to say that something that I've learned a lot about is just neurodiversity. And there are many reasons why people can't give you their attention.
Okay.
And
So
just
give us some examples of that.
so for those that maybe have ADHD, and just it's really hard to focus, right? And to also understand that some people have that, and it's just they're not going to be able to listen in all the ways that you described. And also,
Okay.
even eye contact can be cultural. I when I first lived in the UK, there are a lot of people don't give eye contact. It's considered almost even, it can be so direct or just so bold.
Mhm.
And it took me a while to get used to that. And so the point being is not just saying this is what you need to do. It's just, what are the things that matter to me? What are the forms that matter to me and why?
Mhm.
And and then also to understand that we might have to adapt when we're in the workplace. So whatever we grew up with. I'll give you another example. My partner, he's Korean, and his kids, when they're with their Korean grandmother and they look her straight in the eye, the grandmother's just, that is so rude. But they grew up in the US where it's just you look at people in the eye. But in
Uh-huh.
Korea, you would not look your elder directly in the eye, especially when they are scolding you,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
yet that would be different here. Look me in the eye when I talk to you,
That's rebellion.
right? And so and yet we bring things that we learn to the workplace, and we
Sure.
expect that people have similar experiences and similar interpretations. And so with the seven forms of respect, it's to help people actually get curious about, what are my expectations based on? And what actually matters to me? Because I also want to be clear, just because you have a particular experience doesn't dictate that you will always do that.
Mhm.
Because some people may say, I grew up with this and I don't like it. I'm not going to do that. I grew up with a mom who was always late picking me up from school, and punctuality is super important to me because I had that experience where it's just like, I mean, how often do we see models of how not to be? But I don't want to do that. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we learn about respect by learning what we don't want to do.
All right. So our audience is sitting there and they're thinking, I try to be respectful. What is it? What I mean, if you had one characteristic, one of the forms of respect that they could bring to the table just tomorrow by a change in their thinking, what would that be?
Is to ask about what forms of respect matter to you and
Mm,
to the group. And so it's not just, oh, we always have to do this form. It's actually to start a conversation. Hey, in our team, considering our work, what is a form of respect we really want to prioritize? And Jim, I'm clear about the differentiating between priority and values.
hmm.
Because values is always, no matter what. And priority is taking into consideration the context.
Okay.
And I mean, for example, I, if you think about, should we publicize people's salaries as a way to ensure gender equality? And some people say yes, some people say no. Well, do you value privacy? Do you value transparency?
Yeah.
Right? I value both, but in this case, I'm going to prioritize one over the other, and I have to be able to explain why. And so, what the seven forms of respect does is it forces people to get curious about why am I saying this matters? Because a
Yeah.
lot of times, when I ask people in the workplace and teams what causes misalignment around understanding, having a shared understanding of respect, and I give all these factors. Is it lack of clarity from leadership, working remotely, lack of using digital communication tools, generational differences, Grampy, I don't
Hmm.
know, functional differences, cultural differences. A lot of people say lack of clarity from leadership
Yeah.
because people say one thing and they do another thing. And people do what you
Exactly.
do, not what you say.
Exactly. And there's another part that plays a real significant role in the workplace these days, especially with the generational, I'll call them gaps just because that's the way I learned it. But if you look at those generation gaps, they've created and fostered a difference in passivity,
Mm-hmm.
or passive versus passive aggressive versus aggressive. How does that play a role in team environments?
Yeah, so actually, I have something I call the seven forms of passiveness. That's another thing, Jim. I don't have a book on it yet,
That book
but it's
too?
and I will say though that it's. I actually don't think that being passive is always bad. Sometimes it can be strategic. Sometimes it has to be
Mhm.
protective, actually. And that's something in general. It's just there's no good or bad. There just is, and it's about understanding why. Because once we get into do this or don't do this, then
Mhm.
I think that's that either or perfectionist thinking. Um, so sometimes passiveness comes in
Mhm.
because of fear of retaliation. Often it's because of fear of I don't want to hurt other people's feelings. I don't want to be misinterpreted.
Mhm.
So one of the things, Jim, I ask people is what gets in the way of asking questions at work? And people, and I have all these just afraid of being misunderstood comes up a lot. Afraid
Mhm.
of not having appearing that like I don't know. A fear that I'm gonna seem like I'm challenging authority. So there's a lot of fears around asking questions.
Mhm.
And and so that goes back to why curiosity is a practice. And it's
Mhm.
we can't just say, let's be curious. I think when people talk about curiosity, they put too much emphasis on the why we should be curious. It's like, come on, curiosity is a good thing. The hard thing is how to be curious. And that also requires the leader to have some self reflection. How are they modeling? What are the things they're doing or not doing that send silent signals? So if you're
Yeah.
saying, oh, I want us to be a learning culture, and yet they never participate because they're so busy in when there are professional development opportunities, well, what signals does that send to other people? Well, big boss isn't here. They're not going to see me. Like they're saying that we should do this, but they're not participating. They don't admit when they don't know. they're not espousing, they're not doing the things that would actually signal that they want to learn.
Yeah. So, in your research, have you seen a difference between the types of businesses, say a difference between a manufacturer, a construction company, a service industry, software, etc.?
Yeah, I think that there's so in tech, for example, I was just saying multitasking is totally fine, right? And punctuality, if you are having many meetings overlapping, you are not going to have that. And sometimes like the goal changes a lot. If you're talking about the military, hierarchy is big.
Mm,
Honorifics are going to be big. I actually think more in terms of sectors than in terms of specific industries. We actually work with a lot of government clients. And I think part of that is because they do invest in retention. They want to retain people. They want to invest in that relationship building. They will have people go. Uh, they want to grow people. When I worked in the tech industry, it's actually people get paid compensated really well, and it's just you're either in or you're out. Don't worry, we can find someone to replace you.
oh,
So it's
wow.
much more transactional. So the
Uh-huh.
care of relationship building is not as much of a focus. It's just actually I can pay top dollar for your expertise, and so it's much more. It's a much more of a labor is being extracted, and and
Hmm.
both sides understand, right?
Yeah.
And so actually, sometimes I think employees have certain expectations that are, well, I want this, and I want this. And it's like, look, they're all trade-offs, right? If you want a super high salary, know that if you are no longer valuable to the company, you might
You
get
gone.
booted,
Yeah.
right? Right?
You gone.
Right? And so really think about that in terms of where you are working and understand that there's no perfect workplace, that there's no perfect employee. Uh, I
Well,
do
there
think
was, but then I started working there and it just evaporated.
one of the things I like to ask people is what are elements of practicing curiosity that are lacking among your colleagues and what's
Uh-huh.
lacking among yourself and lacking in
Okay.
yourself. And something that's constant is people say, my colleagues don't listen. I don't have that problem. So, how is it that all these people don't listen? I don't feel heard. I don't feel listened to, yet I don't have that problem. Aren't we
Yeah.
all in this? And so that goes back to so I can't remember if I mentioned this, but curiosity has these, as a practice, has three elements. There's self-awareness,
Uh-huh.
relationship building, and clear communication. So in that first one, self-awareness is practicing inward curiosity and just trying to make time for self-reflection and think, how much of this is me?
Yeah.
How much am I contributing to this?
Yeah.
When I say that this is a toxic workplace, am I participating in gossip? Am I not saying anything when gossip is taking place?
Yeah. Wow. And that really in virtually every case is always driven by the leader, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's often driven by the leader, and sometimes the leader is not as tuned in, and so maybe they're not. Maybe it's actually their inaction that is
Yeah.
leading to things. And so I actually compare it to the playground and at school. If you think about the
Hmm.
teacher, it's just be kind to the students, right? And then there's the playground, and then
Yeah.
there are bullies, and then there are the kids who are just, I just don't want to be bullied, so I'm not going to say anything. They
Yeah.
just watch. And then there are the kids who are just, I'm going to stick up for those who are bullied.
Yeah.
And so, and the teacher is trying their best,
Hmm.
but they can't watch everything. So actually, we are all responsible for fostering curiosity. So another example is someone could say, someone can ask a question, why are we doing this again? And then other people are snickering like, why does Bob like always ask these questions, right? And the other people see them like, oh, I had that question too, but I guess I shouldn't. So I'm not going
Yeah.
to say anything because everyone's snickering at Bob.
Right.
So how much are we actually complicitly adding to that fear
Hmm.
of asking questions?
That playground example is just a perfect microcosm of the workplace and society. I've never
Hmm.
heard it said like that before, but it really is. And those characteristics, as they develop over time, they tend to amplify, don't they?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Well,
because there is something about if people feel that they have to protect themselves,
uh huh.
right? And that's, I
Yeah.
mean, We have to really consider that. How much of what we do or don't do is because we're just scared?
Hmm. For sure. So, as I look at your history on more of a personal level, you are an immigrant who identifies as a Vietnamese American who came to this country, I mean, in many ways, pulled yourself up by your bootstraps. And you went and you got an education. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Berkeley for my undergrad and Cambridge University in the UK for my PhD.
Okay. So, doctor, I would say that one of the things that I read about you is that you also have an MBA, but it's not a
It's a real
it's
life
not a
MBA.
Stanford it's not a Stanford MBA. It's a real life MBA, which I think has an incredible value. Tell us about that.
Yeah. And so first, actually, Jim, I will say, yes, I'm an immigrant and I'm a refugee. And
Mm,
and I want to elaborate here that to be a refugee, to seek political asylum, really focuses on not just America as the pull factors. Oh, people come here for the American dream. It's also the push factors. Why do people leave? And so that's
yeah.
also just to for your listeners to understand that I can be an immigrant and I'm also a refugee. And
Hmm.
so my real life MBA was working at my family's newspaper, and that was 2000. I started in 2008. That was during the Great Recession. That was a really hard time because it also started the global decline of the newspaper industry.
Hmm.
Many cities used to have two newspapers, and now many cities are struggling just to hold on to one print newspaper.
Yeah.
And so I remember learning how to sell. Here I am coming from academia, where we barely talk to people, and
Hmm.
now I have to sell. And I was on a call with an ad agency, and they asked me all these questions, and I didn't know how to answer these questions. And so when I hung up, I said to myself, I'm really bad at this right now, but I'm going to get good. And because I have to, right?
Yeah.
We have to make money. And so the real life MBA is just getting out there and learning and getting mentors. Because I mean, I actually, for a brief moment, like, should I go back to school? It's like, no, I just got my PhD. I do not need to go back to school. I just need to be in it and to learn how to sell, how to distribute, how to market. I, with my brother, we got a small business loan. He put his car on collateral. We got $30,000 to buy out part of the newspaper from our parents. And I Googled how to write a business plan. And it was a community development fund that lent us the money. And they said, this is one of the best business plans. And it was just, I just got to learn how to do this
Hmm.
and that's why I'm actually a really big believer in constraints can make us creative.
Mm.
And I learned so much from other people. So I got my personal board of directors, people who had different strengths who could teach me things. And so I learned learning how to sell was a really big one. And then also doing a lot of community service so that I could get my special theme classes, my special subjects.
Yeah. And when you do community service like that, you actually earn the right to engage, don't you?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I learned so much. And also, Jim, what I didn't expect then was how valuable it would be actually for my business now,
Mm.
because my early customers were people who I volunteered with and who were just, I trust Julie. We volunteered together. I believe she can get this done. I am not trained in what I do.
Yeah.
That was my second real life PhD in community organizing, and now I apply that to organizational development. But I am not my degree is in history, right?
Yeah.
Which is a lot of about perspective taking and believing that multiple truths can coexist. The people who I volunteered with were instrumental to my success as an entrepreneur.
And really, when you look at any successful entrepreneur, and this goes back to our first the first thing we talked about in terms of curiosity. When you're engaging people, and they learn that you're pretty transparent and pretty predictable, and you're always going to strive to do the right thing, even the best right thing sometimes. Um, that's how you generate trust.
Mhm. Consistency,
Yeah, consistency. It's like
consistency,
uh,
showing up.
Yeah. My podcaster says, I took a week off and we didn't launch a podcast and they did a best of and he's like,
Mhm.
that doesn't work. We're not ever doing that again. and
Mhm.
and I was like, why? He says, because people expect you to be here every time, same time every week. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, that makes total sense to me. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, your entrepreneurial journey has a lot of lessons from the trenches, especially I mean, if when I think about the newspaper business, have you gone digital with that newspaper? I mean, what impact has that had? How does it?
Well,
How is it
so
today?
yeah, so our newspaper is in Vietnamese only.
Hmm.
It's not in English, it's in Vietnamese only.
Right.
And so in our reader base is really aging because the people who can read Vietnamese
Mm.
are getting older. There's always people who are coming who are new immigrants who are reading, but
Hmm.
it's very hard for us to compete in terms of news. And this is actually with any community newspaper. News gathering is very expensive. Original content is very expensive. And
Hmm.
so actually we have an online presence, but we barely update it. And that's because our readers are actually more print people. And then we have we're associated with a kind of a mother newspaper in Orange County
Hmm.
where we pull a lot of their news. And so they have
Yeah.
a robust website, so they can go to that. But we
Okay.
actually can't provide original community news the way we used to. My father
Yeah.
actually, he was super dedicated to that. He passed away 4.5 years ago.
I'm
And
sorry.
so that has changed things. And my mom still runs the newspaper. It's a big question mark though, Jim. I mean, this is our newspaper is not the only one to be
Yeah.
facing this.
Yeah. And so, when you have the pulse of that community, you're also, in many ways, you're the lifeblood of information for
Mhm.
a very small, select aging community. Is that accurate?
Yes, I mean, I think that was one of the reasons my parents started the newspaper because they saw the Vietnamese community was growing. It's just, oh, let's have a way to connect them. Mediums change though.
Yeah.
And so now people are on Facebook, they have
Yeah.
social media, there are these groups, and there's also events that people have. And that's actually one of the things I'm really proud of is just how there's so much pride in being Vietnamese.
Hmm.
And so there are really robust events that are also very popular for non-Vietnamese. Even at the Seattle Center, they have every year this event called Bet in Seattle, and that's the Lunar New Year 2-day festival. So things evolve and change, and as entrepreneurs, we have to just be okay with that. And I also believe that a community newspaper, my family, we are just stewards
There you go.
and
I was going to say
of the
it's a mission.
newspaper.
It's a
Right?
mission
And
more
then
than
at some
a.
point, maybe there'll be another steward. I don't feel that we own it. I feel that we are just stewards of that, and the forms that it take will change, and all news media outlets are dealing with this.
Yeah. So, Julie, as people are looking around, they can find you on TEDx. They can find your book. They can find you online. Where do you want them to find you?
I am most active on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
So please just find me on LinkedIn. And also I have a YouTube channel as well. LinkedIn is my home and please connect with me.
Okay. And then your website is curiositybased.com.
Yes. Yes.
All
And I also
right.
have another website just for the book called formsofrespect.com too. And please check out my TEDx talk on curiosity as a practice.
All right. Forms of respect and TEDx curiosity as a practice. Julie Pham, I want to thank you for being on the Grampian. But before you go, there is someone who has been so influential in your life that they helped make you the champion that you are. And so they're a champion to you. Who's that person who has had such a dramatic impact that you just give
So
them
I
props right
I
now?
want to bring up my dear friend Regina Glenn. She actually is just about to turn 80, and she has been a godmother, like a fairy godmother to me in my business. I remember when I realized I was going to start a business, I called her up and she called up her lawyer and just my friend Julie Pham, three-way in. It was a Sunday. Just have questions. And after I asked my questions, she was to the lawyer, bill me for that. And I was like, wow. And I met her years before I started my business. And she's just been teaching me and introducing me. And I think that there's a difference between giving advice and truly endorsing and sponsoring someone.
Uh-huh.
Are people willing to put their name and their reputation on the line to support you versus just, oh, this is what you should do? And Regina has been someone who doesn't just give advice, she has been a sponsor.
All right. Well, Regina,
Regina
thank you
Glenn.
for the mentoring and the sponsoring of our guest, Julie Pham, and Grampian Nation. Hey, you guys out there, you keep dreaming those Grampian-sized dreams. This is Jim, and I am out. When you get an opportunity, subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcast. Grampian Nation, I wanted to say thank you. You have made Building Men a category bestseller on Amazon. We're doing phenomenal on Barnes & Noble. If you have not yet read Building Men, I'd encourage you, go online, find a copy wherever you get books, and give us a great review. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the next time we get to chat on the Grampian.